everyone. It's been a while and really excited to be spending time with you this afternoon. So if you've been with us over the past few weeks, you know that we are super looking forward to our next milestone of the TiVo Reconstructed, right? Which is the TiVo Youth Summer Halls. So it's our special June holiday program for youths. It's packed with like games, outings, good vibes, and meaningful moments. And if you are new here today or you brought a friend, we'd love for you to join us for the rest of the holidays. And we have so much more lined up, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Okay, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit, right? So to kick things off, I got a little quiz for you. Okay, ready? Okay, I'm gonna name a couple of people, and let's see if you know who they are and what they are known for. Okay, first pair, we have Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. Okay, any guesses? Who are they? I mean, yes, you learn from history. Dictators. Anybody else? The JC students, anybody know? No? Okay. Okay, so these are some of the most notorious leaders in history, known for their cruelty, destruction, and using power for evil. But here's the flip side, okay? What about these names, okay? Mother Teresa and Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, who are they? What are they known for? Samaritan. Kindness, okay. Anything else? Love, yes, okay. So these are the people who step up to fight for injustice, they serve the poor, and they stand up for what is right, even when it costs them everything. So just a side track, it's really funny because I was like searching notorious leaders, right? I realized there's this pattern. It's somehow all of them were men. Okay, but back then, it was more patriarchal, right? And those who champion good, right, actually more than half of them were women, okay? Just saying, okay, so up to your interpretation, okay? Now, in every generation, we see this contrast, okay? People who use power to harm and others who rise up to heal. Evil doesn't just disappear with time. Even today, we live in a world that's still very broken. There's bullying in schools, racism, injustice, selfishness, and loneliness. But here's what I noticed, right? Every time evil rises, someone rises too. And from the Bible, we see it again and again, some of the popular stories, right? God raised Moses to free the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. He chose Esther, a young woman, to stand out and save her people from destruction. He called David, a shepherd boy, to fight Goliath when no one else would. And he sent Jesus, not as a conquering king, but as a servant to love, to heal, and to ultimately lay down his life for the world. Now you might think, wow, cool. Wow, very high aspiration, right, to be like those people. Those people are like heroes, okay? I'm just me. But here's the truth. Many of them were just ordinary. Some were even poor. Some were inexperienced. Some were scared. But they all had something in common, which is courage and a willingness to step up and do good. And that brings us to you guys, okay? So you may not be living through war, but you're facing your own battles, right? In school, where people get left out, mocked, or pressured to fit in. In friendship, where drama and gossip can tear people apart. In your own thoughts, where insecurity or fear can feel overwhelming. So you don't need to be famous to fight against those things, you just need heart, right? So in the world where there is still so much brokenness, so much injustice, we need more good men, women, human beings. So there is a saying very well put together. It says, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So today we're talking about a few good men. Okay, I'll get to the story. Now, not just men, okay, there are women too, young people, ordinary students, teens, friends, the kind of people who are willing to say, I'll be different, I'll do good, and I'll lead. Because what the world needs now isn't more followers. It needs more leaders, young people who lead with purpose, with courage, and love. And that's what today's message is all about. So I'm going to dive in, okay? So the first point I have for you is to lead with purpose. And to say to step up even when you feel small. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt small? Like what you said doesn't really matter. Maybe you have moments where you say something or do something or stand up for someone, but something inside you whispered, why bother? Right? No one listens anyway. That voice of doubt, it's very loud, right? Especially when you're young. Especially in a world that often says, you are too young. You don't understand. Let the adults handle it. But let me tell you a story about someone who didn't wait for permission to make a difference. And her name is Malala Yousafzai, if I pronounce her name correctly. Okay, I'll call her Malala. So she was just a student like any of you, okay, a few years ago. And she lived in Pakistan and loved going to school. But when the Taliban took control of a region, they banned girls from getting an education. So imagine that, right? One day you're just going to class, and then the next day someone says, girls like you shouldn't learn. Now, most people were too afraid to speak up. But Malala, at 11 years old, started writing anonymous blog posts for the BBC. And she shared what life was like for girls under the Taliban. And her words were simple but brave. And then everything changed. One day, on her way home from school, gunmen stopped her bus and shot her in the head. She was just 15 years old. She nearly died. But of course, she survived. And what she did next, she didn't hide, she didn't give up. After surviving the attack, she kept speaking out. She gave speeches around the world. She co-founded the Malala Fund, which has since invested over $150 million into education advocacy, supporting over 12 million girls in countries like Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Syria. And in 2014, she became the youngest ever Nobel Peace Prize laureate at just 17. Today, her voice continues to impact education policies worldwide. She inspired new laws, built schools, and sparked a global movement for girls' rights to education. You see, that's what leadership with purpose look like. She didn't start with a big platform or millions of followers. She started with just conviction, with heart, with the belief that doing nothing was no longer an option. And the Bible also tells us about a young man, just like Malala in many ways, and his name was Timothy. So he was probably in his late teens or early 20s when he became a church leader. So imagine that, right? Being asked to lead a whole community of adults, when most people still think of you as that young kid, right? The young kid. People looked down on him, doubted him. But Paul, his mentor, wrote these words to him. In 1 Timothy 4:12. It says, don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. Instead, set an example for the believers with your speech, behavior, love, faith, and purity. Now, this verse is for us too. You see, we don't have to wait until we are older to make an impact. You can be the one who sets the tone in how you talk, in how you act, how you treat others, and how you love. Now, you might be thinking, right, I'm not facing, again, terrorists or leading churches. Fair, but let's bring it closer to home. Now, in Singapore, according to the 2023 joint study by the Ministry of Education, IMH, and HPB, Health Promotion Board, about 1 in 3 secondary school students reported feeling stressed, anxious, or emotionally unwell. Some feel pressured by grades or parental expectations. Others struggled with feeling left out or pretending to be okay on social media. Some are bullied, not always physically, but online, quietly, through sarcasm and exclusion. And some just feel invisible, like they are not seen or heard. Now, in a world like that, stepping up can look different. It could mean being the person who listens, really listen, okay? Or saying, hey, are you okay? To someone who looks like they're struggling. It could mean choosing kindness when a group chooses gossip. Or speaking up when something doesn't sit right, even if it's awkward. These moments might seem small, but they matter. So think of it as a matchstick, okay? It's tiny. You can, break it in half easily, right? But when struck, it sparks. And that spark, it can light a candle, it can start a fire, or spread warmth and light in the darkest place. You are that spark. You may feel small, you may not have it all figured out, but if you choose to act with purpose, even one act of kindness, one moment of courage, one yes to doing good, can be the beginning of something really powerful. So here's the challenge for you this week, right? Take one small step of courage, just one. Okay, don't need to tackle the world. Just take one step of courage. And that could look like, checking in on a classmate who's been quiet lately. Or starting maybe a WhatsApp group with a few friends where you can be real with each other. Talking to a teacher or counselor if someone you know is hurting. Or just simply draw a text to someone and say, hey, you're not alone. Listen, you don't have to save the world, but you can be the reason someone doesn't give up. You can be the spark that lights something greater. Because like Malala, like Timothy, like you're not too small to lead. you're just right to begin. Point number 2 is to lead with courage, which is to do what's right even when it's hard. So we talk about stepping up even when you feel small. But here's the next truth, right? Sometimes doing right things feels hard, like really hard. Doing good isn't always about standing on the stage. Sometimes it's about standing alone. Right? Have you ever had one of these moments? Your friends make a joke about someone else and inside of you says, that's not okay. But you just laugh along to avoid feeling awkwardness. Or a classmate gets blamed for something you know they didn't do, but you stay quiet because you don't want to get involved. Or someone asks how you're doing and you say, okay, I'm fine. But deep down inside, you're not. See, these are the real battles. And let's be honest, it's easier to stay quiet. It's easier to go with the flow. But courage means doing the right thing even when it costs you something. Now, another story about a few years back about Greta Thunberg. Okay, when Greta Thunberg was just 15, she was a regular teenager in Sweden. But every time she saw the news about wildfires, rising sea levels, melting ice caps, she felt very helpless. And she thought, why aren't the adults doing more about this? And instead of staying silent, she started protesting by herself. So every Friday, she skipped school and sat outside the Swedish parliament holding a sign that read, "School strike for climate." Now, you think like, wow, suddenly one day there, the next day, a lot of people join her, right? For weeks, no one joined her. She sat alone. People told her she was just wasting her time. She was too young, she didn't know enough. But she kept going because she believed doing nothing was worse. You see, her courage sparked a movement. Soon, students all over the world joined in. She went on to speak at the United Nations, looked world leaders in the eye and said, and quoting her, right, "You are failing us, but the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The world is waking up." And that really kickstarted the movement. Now today, Fridays for Future, the movement she started, has mobilized millions of students in over 150 countries to advocate for the environment. You see, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're afraid, even when you are the only one, or you feel like you're the only one. Now, one of the most famous stories of courage in the Bible is none other than David and Goliath, right? So you might know it even if you didn't grow up in church. So here's the gist, right? The Israelites were being bullied by the Philistines, especially by their champion Goliath, a giant warrior, okay, huge. Everyone was terrified. No one dared to fight him. Okay, then enter David, okay, this young shepherd boy, maybe 16, 17 years old, going for war, no armor, no sword, just a sling, a few stones, a lot of faith. People laughed at him. And even his brothers told him to go home, don't get into this. But David stood before Goliath and said in 1 Samuel 17:45, and he's speaking to Goliath, that warrior that has been, insulting them, right? And he's huge. And he says, "You are coming against me with sword, spear, and scimitar, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of heavenly forces, the God of Israel army, the one you have insulted." That's quite a statement to say. And with one stone, he brought the giant down. Now, David didn't win because he was strong. He won because he had courage. Now, I like this analogy, right? Courage is like standing at the edge of a diving board. There's water, that water is down there. And you've seen others jump, but when it's your turn, right, it's like, everything in you wants to okay, let me back away a few steps. But the truth is, most people stay on the edge. It's safe there. But leaders, they jump. Not because they are fearless, but because they know what's waiting on the other side is worth it. Now, another study in 2021 by the National Youth Council of Singapore, that again, over 60% of secondary school students said they struggle with fear of judgment and peer pressure. They want to speak up, but they're afraid of being cancelled or excluded, being seen as extra or weird, not knowing what to say or how to say it, they're alone. Because courage is hard when the pressure to fit in is real. But now here's the lesson I want to share with you, right? Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being light. So again, here's the challenge for you this week. What's one thing you've been silent about that maybe it's time for you to speak up for? Maybe it's stopping gossip in your class WhatsApp group or in your friend group. Saying, hey, that's not okay when someone crosses the line. Opening up to someone you trust about your struggles. helping a friend who's constantly being picked on, even if no one else does. Listen, courage doesn't always roar, right? It isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that says, do it afraid. You see, you might not be holding a protest sign like Greta, right? Or you might not be facing a giant in battle like David, but you will face pressure, you will face fear, you will face doubt. And when you do, remember this, you don't need to be loud to be brave, you just need to be willing. You see, because the world doesn't change when perfect people show up, it changes when ordinary people like you and I chooses to do the right thing, especially when it's hard. See, be one of the few, lead with courage. Now, point number 3 is to lead with love. Okay, everyone say me love. And I want to say is to let compassion be your power. You see, we've talked about stepping out even when you feel small. We've talked about standing strong even when it's hard. But here's something that's often misunderstood. Leadership isn't about being the loudest in the room, it's about being the most loving. Now, I don't mean like love is like that very soft, very weak, gentle kind of. I mean choosing empathy over ego. I mean choosing kindness over cliques, being cliquish. To choose healing over hate. Because in a world that feels increasingly loud and divided and fast-paced, what the world needs more than ever is compassion. You see, Jesus is the ultimate example of what it looks like to lead with love. Throughout the Bible, Jesus constantly reached out to people that society rejected. Those who were sick, those who were poor, those who were broken and forgotten. But he didn't just help them, he honored them. He looked them in the eye, he listened, he touched the untouchable. So one powerful moment is found in John 8. It's a story about a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. Oh, right? So according to the law, she was supposed to be stoned to death. The religious leaders dragged her into the temple courts and threw her before Jesus, trying to trap him. And they asked, "Teacher, what should we do?" Right? So here's how Jesus responded in John 8, verse 7. So they kept asking him about this, so he stood up and said, "Whoever hasn't sinned should throw the first stone." Wow, we need it, right? Now, and one by one, the crowd walked away. Jesus then turned to the woman and said in verse 10, "Woman, where are they? Is there no one to condemn you?" She said, "No one, sir." Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, don't sin anymore." You see, that's compassion. He didn't excuse what she did, but he saw her beyond her mistake. He showed her love before he gave correction. That's leadership. That's power. Now, another moment is a story about Jesus and the lepers. Right? Lepers were outcasts. Okay, no one would touch them. But this one leper came to Jesus and said, "Lord, if you want, you can make me clean." And Jesus did something no one else would dare to. In Matthew 8, verse 3, Jesus reached out his hand and touched him, saying, "I do want to be clean." And instantly, the skin disease was cleansed. You see, Jesus could I can heal with words, right? Be healed. Okay, yeah, awesome, go bye. But he chose to heal with touch. That no one dared to do it at the time. You see, because love isn't just about fixing someone's problem. It's about showing them that they matter. Time after time, Jesus led by loving first. He wept with his friends. He forgave those who betrayed him. He fed the hungry. He lifted up the forgotten. And in the end, he gave his life not for applause, not for power, but to give us hope. Right, in John 15:13, it says, "There is no greater love than to give up one's life for one's friends." That's not just leadership, that's love in its most powerful form. Well, okay, we don't have to die today, okay? But leadership with love can be expressed in many little ways. So again, I love this analogy. So imagine a rainy day. We are standing alone at a bus stop and it's pouring. Everyone's like saying themselves, right? Don't get the rain, open the umbrella, block themselves, right? Or they're herded in their own world. But then someone walks up beside you and just holds out an umbrella, not because they have to, but because they see you. Love is the umbrella. You know, it doesn't make the storm go away, but it tells someone that you don't have to stand in the rain alone. That's leadership. Ready for one more study? So according to the 2022 Youth Mental Wellbeing Survey by the National Council of Social Service, Over 1 in 2 youth aged 13 to 17 in Singapore said they often feel like they have to fake being okay. How many of you might relate to that, right? Why? Because of peer pressure. Because they are afraid of burdening others. Because they think, no one really cares. And this creates a cycle. Everyone looks okay on the outside, but inside, many are hurting. Now imagine what could change if someone, you and I, chose to love boldly. To notice someone who's withdrawn. To ask someone how they really are and mean it. To create safe spaces for honesty and support. You see, love is powerful. It doesn't just comfort, it transforms. So here's the challenge for you is to lead with love right where you are. Start by asking yourself, who do I need to see, not just look at? Who around me is hurting, but hiding it well, right? How can I be someone safe, someone real, and someone kind? So maybe that means, starting a daily habit of checking in on one friend, or starting with your best friend. Or creating a small, no judgment zone chat where people can be real. Or speaking out when you see someone being left out, even if it's subtle. Or saying thank you to the classmate who has always helped quietly. Listen, you don't need a title to lead with love. You just need to care enough to act. So at the start of the talk, we said, what the world needs now is a few good men, right, and women. Not perfect people, not powerful people, just willing people. You don't have to be the loudest in the room. You don't have to be famous. You just have to choose love. Because the kind of leader who changes the world isn't the one who shows off, but it's the one who shows up. So be that person, lead with love, and let compassion be your power. So I'm going to land with one last story. And I want to take us back to the summer of 1940. So the skies above Britain were filled with smoke and fire. It's the World War II. Right? Germany had conquered most of Europe. And now they set their eyes on Britain. And their plan was simple. Break the spirit of the people by bombing them relentlessly every day, every night. Now, this was called the Battle of Britain. On the ground, families built bomb shelters in their gardens. Children were sent away to the countryside, separated from their parents for safety. Air raid sirens were constant and fear was everywhere. But here's the part most people forget. Is that the fate of the entire country rested on the shoulders of a few hundred young men, the fighter pilots of the Royal Air Force. They were called the Few. Oh, quite cool, the Few. Now, some of them were just 18, 19, 20 years old. Youths, okay, not much older than you. Many had barely completed their training. Some had never flown in combat before. They were outnumbered, they were outgunned, they were outmatched. Every morning, they took off in their warplanes, not knowing if they would return. Some didn't return. They had to watch their friends go down in flames in the sky. They had to land damaged planes with no wheels, on fire, and with no fuel. They fought in the air, but they carried the weight of an entire nation on their backs, and yet they didn't give up. Now, among those brave airmen was a group with something even more personal at stake. They weren't British. They were Polish. And these were the guys from Squadron 303, pilots who had already lost their home when Germany invaded Poland first. These guys weren't just fighting for Britain. They were fighting for their country, their family, their future. When Poland fell, they didn't give up. They fled across Europe, they trained under new systems, they learned a new language, and finally made it to Britain, ready to keep fighting. And even though many British commanders didn't think they could handle it, but the 303 Squadron quickly proved them wrong. They became one of the most successful and feared squadrons in the entire Royal Air Force. And in just a few short weeks, they took down more German planes than any other squadron. Their courage was unmatched, their skills, it was extraordinary, their reason, really deeply personal. And they were fighting not just for survival, but for hope. Hope that one day their homeland will be free again. Winston Churchill later said in his speech about this young man, and quote him, it says, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." Imagine that. Fighting someone else's battle because you still believe in what's good. Because love for others matters more than fear for yourself. You see, the men of this squadron could have given up long time ago. They had every reason to. They have lost everything. But they chose to keep going. They chose to fly. And the reason why is because the people they love still matter. The freedom still matter. Because doing good, even when the odds are stacked against you, is always worth it. Now again, you are not fighting wars today, right? But you know what it feels like to face battles that others don't always see. You're facing other giants, right? Injustice in your schools, gossips that tear down people, depression that's eating someone alive behind a smile, pressures that tell you to stay quiet, stay cool, stay numb. But what if today you are like the pilots of the 303 Squadron? You chose to rise up anyway, to love anyway, to lead anyway, to show up. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. One of the few who choose kindness in a culture of sarcasm, to choose honesty in a world of filters, to choose purpose over popularity, to choose love when it's easier to just look away. You see, you may feel small, unqualified, unsure today, but so did they. But they showed up and they flew. So today we remember them not because they were perfect, but because they were willing. So here's the question, to leave you with today. Will you be one of the few? Not just someday, now. Because the world still needs, defenders of the truth, voices of love, and hearts that won't give up. And just in case you didn't catch this, just my final closing thought is that changing the world doesn't always look like big scale or it always must be social justice driven. It starts by simply loving the people around you. You may think that you are just doing something very small, very insignificant. But neither do you know that for that person which you choose to love, it could mean they're everything. So I just want to say, lead now, the world needs you.